morning. Welcome to Unity of Charlotte. It is my privilege and pleasure to welcome you this morning. My name is Marty Bacher, and I serve as the spiritual director and senior minister and chief dishwasher of the community, which is a lovely and wonderful thing. Delighted that we can be here together today. If you're joining us for the first time today, we just want to welcome you. We invite you to relax and enjoy yourself. We hope you received a packet as you came in, a little information about us, and we just invite you to avail yourself of this wonderful community and all that we offer. We are a community that believes our lives are enhanced by being in spiritual community together, by practicing these principles and learning how to utilize the power of our mind and our heart and our soul to live a fulfilled life. So we're just grateful to be together. If you're in need of spiritual support, we want to make you aware of our ministry of prayer, which is available. You can do that either online, place a request, or there is a prayer box in the lobby there that you can fill out prayer requests there. And it's our privilege to know the spiritual truth and reality with and for you. So there's wonderful things taking place in our community all the time. We are today, first Sunday of the month, Potluck Sunday. We live for our food. We like to say in our community where two or more are gathered, there will be food. So we invite you to stay with us and join us. If you didn't bring anything, there's always tons of food, so we just invite you to be in fellowship with us. Also, if you haven't signed up for a Connect group yet, we would like to invite you to do so today. Who would they see on that, Kelly, if they're not yet enrolled? You, Kelly? Kelly, stand up so they can see. Stand up, Kelly. Oh, she is. I got it. Sorry, I know. Such an old joke. Such an old joke, right? Never heard that one before, did you? Also, we have coming up a Reiki 1 training. We have a Reiki master in our midst, Sandy Metlock, who is going to offer that training on the Saturday and Sunday, the 16th and 17th. So if that's something of interest to you, you can see her today. You can sign up today. We'd love for you to avail yourself of that. We have many people who are practicing Reiki within our community. Just one more spiritual tool in our toolbox. Also, we have coming up the story of unity, kind of an intro to where do we come from. That will be on Wednesdays, starting February 20th at 6:30. So we invite you to do that as well. So there's lots of wonderful, wonderful things going on all of the time here. So we invite you to stay tuned, plugged in. You may have noticed that we've kind of moved things around. We had a beautiful piano donated to us. Thank you, God. And so I figured we're this close to having a pianist to go with said piano. So keep holding that high intention. And so thank you for your flexibility as we continue to evolve and grow and become. At this point, let us begin our inward journey as we move into prayer, into that recognition of this one life, this one presence, and this one power that is expressing in and through and as all of creation, that cares not what we call it. Whether we call it God or the 10,000 other names, there is a life presence that is expressing here and now. And so as we open our hearts this day to the awareness that we do indeed live, move, and have our very being in the one, and that our thoughts are creative, and that we are open, receptive vehicles for greater love, greater peace, more joy. We simply allow this day to be a day in which we remember the truth of who we are, that we live from that high consciousness, that high awareness, that we allow our light to shine brightly. And how grateful I am for the many hands and hearts that come together every day to provide this service, to provide this place, to provide these teachings. Truly, we are blessed. And so giving thanks for all of our blessings, we simply move into this day with a sense of gratitude and a sense of anticipation, remembering that God is and all is well. And through the power of the living Christ, I simply affirm this word. I release it knowing it is so. As together we say, and so it is. Amen. Affirmation for the month of February. So if you will join me, divine love dissolves fear and sets me free. I am filled with this powerful presence. I fully and freely forgive myself and others. I choose love over all other options. Divine love dissolves fear and sets me free. Thank you. Today's reading comes from Dr. Howard Thurman. I often quote or read from Dr. Howard Thurman, but in that it's Black History Month, I'm going to make a point of every inspirational reading will come from some wonderful person of color that has shared their wisdom and insight. Dr. Howard Thurman, for those that don't know, is just a brilliant soul, beautiful person that actually was so instrumental in the civil rights movement, was a supporter of Dr. Martin Luther King and a mentor to many others. He actually had one of the first interracial churches in America. So he was ahead of the game, and it's a beautiful thing. I often go to him in times of inspiration, and just reminding myself that just a couple years ago I was in a hospital wondering if I was going to stick around on this planet or go to another, and turns out stuck here. So, but I love this passage about trusting the divine, and I have changed it a little bit to make it gender inclusive, which I don't think he would mind. So this is called a seed upon the wind. A person without God is a seed upon the wind. What a picture. A tiny living thing awaited its moment of fulfillment. Caught up in the movement of tremendous energy, is at the mercy of forces that are not responsive to its own end. There is a grand and conscious vitality unfolding with mounting energy, its impersonal purpose. In the grip of something like this, what is a tiny seed? No more than a particle of dust, a nameless nothing. Here is the abandonment of all purpose, stark helplessness, without mooring or anchor. The fact that there is locked within the seed a private world of patterned design makes no difference to the fierce velocities that sweep it on the reckless, relentless way. A person without God is a seed upon the wind. She is a victim of the currents of life that carry her where they will, with a bland unmindfulness of purposes and ends which belong to her as a living, thinking, feeling creature. It means that such a person has no sense of center. He takes his clue to all meaning and values from the passing moment, the transitory event, and the immediate issue of the day. The Master speaks of this in his direct question. What would man give in exchange for his soul? But there is a sense in which a person with God is a seed upon the wind. The person who has made the primary surrender, the commitment, the yielding to God at the core of one's being. This is one who has relaxed his or her will to exercise and hold firm the initiative over one's life. This does not come without exacting struggle of the soul. One by one, the outposts of one's spirit are captured, retaken, and at last again through hours, months, or even years of spiritual warfare, until at last the very citadel of one's spirit is under siege and one is subjected to utter yielding. There follows often the long silence when nothing stirs. And then out of the quiet of one's vanquished spirit, something stirs and a new life emerges that belongs more to God than to self. The movement now rests with purposes that are beyond the little purposes, with ends that transcend the private ends. They are the purposes and ends of God. There is a sense in which a person with God is a seed upon the wind. So wherever you are today, whether you're feeling buffeted by the winds of change and out of control, or surrendering to that divine intelligence, allowing life to move through you and to guide you where it will, we're grateful you're here with us today. So we have this young lady who snuck in here one day, all shy and retiring, and we just keep pushing her. Because she has an amazing gift to give in so many ways. We're grateful. Please welcome Susan Caney. seem to remember a conversation that went something like, okay, I'll sing, but as long as you don't make me stand on stage. I said, sure, of course. Of course we would never do that, right? Thank you. Wasn't that beautiful? It was so beautiful. Such a simple, simple reminder. I've been engaged recently in taking some Unity courses. Some of you know I come from Centers for Spiritual Living, where I spent 25 years as a minister and all the preparation for that. And so Unity and Science of Mind are cousins, teaching a very similar philosophy, a little difference. You guys are more okay with Jesus, which is good by me. And so part of my agreement in becoming a Center for Spiritual Living minister, leading a Unity community, is I should figure out what Unity is. So why not? So no, it's been fun, and obviously I've studied the Fillmores for years, but to be actually in this class, and so it's kind of fun being in the Foundations of Unity class with people from all around the country. There's about 30 or 40 of us in this online class, and we're sharing about this experience that many of us have, of many of us coming to God as this power, this person outside of ourselves. Anybody grow up in that tradition? Yeah. That God was a guy, of course, on a cloud somewhere, judging us, granting favor to some, punishing others, that whole mindset. And so in growing up in that tradition, my relationship with the divine was really more about how do I get God to give me what I want. I was young, so that's okay, right? About how do I get this divine intercession? How do I get this power that's outside of me to work for me? And so many of us come from that tradition. There's nothing wrong with it, but many of us also sought something more, something different, something that allowed us to be empowered. Now I say there's really two doors that we come through, it seems like, to come into these teachings. One is pain, and one is just a divine discontent. That search for something more, that I'm needing something more, and sometimes we create crisis in order to find a way. You'll never guess which tradition I came from. I had to do crisis. And I had to, I was on a search, I was on a quest, and I was convinced, based on my early conditioning, that what I was looking for would not be found in church. Because I was above all that. I was intelligent, and I had this whole reason of why I don't believe in organized religion, and da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, right? And yet, lo and behold, if life wouldn't lead me to a path where I found a community of people that had a very different concept of the divine. That it was not about a God, a power, a man standing outside of me, judging me, or rewarding me, or punishing me, or anyone else, but rather a divine intelligence. Presence that is the source and the substance of all that is, that simply exists and delights in its self-expression, and it creates through its creation. So there's no separation between the divine and that which it has created. Rather, the outpicturing of this spiritual wisdom, the spiritual intelligence, is the physical universe in which we live. So I often call it that when we look around, this universe that we live in is the body of God. And we are all its parts. Now that kind of changes everything, doesn't it? Once you realize that God is not something out there that we're in search of, but rather this divine presence that animates our very being, that expresses through us and as us, then the relationship is very different. And we realize that we are not being punished for our wrongdoing, but rather punished by our wrongdoing. Right? By that I mean we've all heard of this law of karma, or cause and effect, or golden rule, or all the many names that it's been called, but this idea that what you put out comes back to you. Right? That's a pretty universal teaching. It's taught in different language in different ways with different traditions, but ultimately we realize that there is a cause and there is an effect. Now, many of us, working from an old paradigm, try and change the effect, thinking that if the effect is different, the cause will be different. Right? What do I mean by that? We say, well, if I only had more money, then I would be prosperous. If I only had a relationship, I would feel loved. If I only had this, whatever this is for you, then I will have an experience of the divine. Well, turns out that's looking to make effect give us cause. And so when we start to understand that we are live, move, and have our very being in the presence of the divine, that life is expressing itself as us, through us, then we realize that we are co-creative beings with the divine. And so when you start to read the Bible from that context, you get some clues. You start to see that this eternal teaching has been there all along. Remember Job saying, that which I have feared the most has come upon me. Jesus said, it is done unto you as you believe. There's some clues that we begin to understand as we embrace this teaching that we are not separate from the divine, but rather we are working with it either consciously or unconsciously. And so many of us spent time in our unconscious way of approaching life, and we found we got results that were reflective of that level of consciousness. It's a fascinating thing. How does life get to be the way it is? You see, what happens as we're learning to work with these principles, when we're embracing that we are co-creative, we realize that we have an internal voice, an internal dialogue. Anybody ever notice that? That voice that talks all the freaking time has running commentary. You know, you have this running commentary of this voice that's defining the world for you. Like, oh, look, there's a dog. Oh, that dog looks like my first dog. I love that dog. It's too bad what happened to my dog. Right? All of a sudden you're off in some history, some story about that, because you perceive something. And then you related it to what is known. So the way that the inner dialogue is developed is it is a reflection of what we believe to be true. You see, if we just sat in our openness and just accepted all of life, what life's bringing to us, it would be so overwhelming we would melt. Right? I think of it sometimes as like these, and I'm going to say something that's probably so technically not correct, there's electricity. Electricity's powerful and whatever, and then they have these little things that it goes through on the power post that makes it come out of the wall at 110, right? What's that thing called? Transformer. See, I knew somebody would know this, right? Right? So the transformer kind of shuts down that powerful energy so that your appliance doesn't blow up. Likewise, our minds, in a way, have sort of been that transformer to sort of sort and sift through all the information that we're exposed to all of the time so that our minds don't blow up. Right? Now, the only problem with that is that we then become habitual thinkers. And so we make decisions along the way to sort of sort and sift through the information flow. And so perhaps something happened in our childhoods or some experience that we had that says, oh, I don't deserve love. Or I'm unworthy. Or nice people do this and bad people do that, or money is this and money is that. And we start to formulate what I always call this belief system, our personal BS belief system, so that we are walking through the world with a belief system that not only it creates the world, but also perceives the world. And so when we start to think a certain way and we make a decision about how life is, then the information that we let through the filter always reflects what we believe to be true. Right? So when I was younger, I believed that if I found the right relationship, I would be happy. I went through a lot of relationships because nobody seemed to buy into my program. They didn't see it as their purpose in life is to make me happy. So you can see the problem with that relationship. It's like, hey, if you're not even going to play by the rules, I'll go find somebody that will. I moved a lot because I kept thinking if I found the right place to live, surely I'd be happy there. And you know what? That great saying that wherever you go, there you are. There you are. So then I was always trying to change my reality by changing my outer experience and wondering why I was still miserable. Wow. So then I stumble into a church like this and they start rocking my world by saying it's not God rewarding or punishing, it's you thinking into the creative medium that is producing the result that you're having in your life. And if you want to have a different effect, then it might make sense to change the cause. Well, that's interesting. Then they started getting into the fine print and saying, if you want to change the cause, you need to take responsibility for your life. I know. That was good for the first part. The second part is like, I can't blame my parents. I can't blame the economy. I can't blame these drivers. I can't blame, right? They're like, no, you get to take responsibility for being co-creative with a universal intelligence to produce the life that you have. There is no blame. There's no shame in it. There's nothing wrong. It's just the recognition that I have through my unconscious created this life, and that if I'm not happy with this life, then I would do well to spend less time trying to change the people around me and more doing my inner work. And so that introduces us to this idea. I'm kind of loosely working from Michael Singer's The Untethered Soul this month, just because he's brilliant and there's some great information. But he has this idea that he speaks of the voice inside. And so we all have that voice inside. This voice that has the running commentary. And so often what we want to do is shut it down, right? Laying in bed at night, their voice is, voice is like, finally, I got you all to myself. You're just laying here. Let me tell you what I've been thinking all day, right? And you're like, stop talking. I just want to sleep, right? Because the voice is, right? Now, there's that voice, and that voice is reflective of our belief system, of what we have come to believe. So it is that voice that perceives reality around us, that decides what is true and not true. It's based on its, however we got there is how we got there. And now those are the filters through which we're perceiving reality. So sometimes what we find is we just want to shut that down. Go away. Leave me alone. But really what I believe is we start to understand these inner teachings is if we will listen to that voice and hear what it is telling us, we can now have a new conversation. A new conversation that is speaking the truth of who we are. You see, in metaphysics, unity, Centers for Spiritual Living, all different traditions, sometimes people will say, don't ever say anything negative. You just create it, because you're co-creative beings. right? Don't do that. But what I believe is that when we have negativity at our heart and at our soul, it's still there. And that is the level that the universal intelligence is working at, is at the subconscious. So when we are listening to the voice, we also become aware of another presence. And that is the presence we might call the witness, the observer. So isn't it wonderful that we have this part of us that is at peace and is observing the inner voice? There's a part of us that observes what that voice is saying. So we know we got at least two in our head. Now, some of us, there's 3, 4, 5, sometimes, all running around trying to get attention, right? So we have the narrative, the voice, commenting on how life is and how life isn't. And then we have the observer. And when we work in our spiritual practice is about learning to develop that place of silence where we tap into the observer mind, where we tap into the presence that is at peace, that is divine love, that is all good. And we start to identify with that. So in unity, when we're speaking these words of truth, when we're affirming the presence of God is alive in me, we're starting to reformulate our belief system. And as we start to do that, then we start to have the experience of that. So it's not necessarily a bad thing to listen to that voice and then realize that just because we've had a habit of saying that for 40 years doesn't mean we have to spend the next 40 saying the same thing if it doesn't serve us. Well, you say, well, you don't understand, Reverend Marty. That's just the way I am. And I would say, okay, you're screwed. No, I wouldn't say that. I would never say that. I would say something more profound like, well, maybe this is a new moment of creation. Maybe this is a new moment of possibility. And the fact that you have proven yourself right for all these years is only a testament to the power of who you are. You see, I believed in, I'll just call it negative relationships. I created them. I was good. I mean, I could manifest a bad relationship like nobody's business. It was amazing. 100 people in a room, I'd find the one who needed to be saved, because let's face it, I was all about saving people. Right? Isn't that amazing? Isn't it amazing? You can pick out of all of the people on the planet, the ones that are right there for your personal growth and unfoldment. And you're not seeing them as a gift, you're seeing them as a pain. Until we learn to see that. It's fun because I'm watching, we're kind of starting year 2 of with me, right? It's my second year as the leader. And the reason I was attracted to being a part of this community, out of all the spiritual communities on the planet, somehow I walked through these doors. And the reason I walked through these doors is because after this kind of crisis in my life where I was like, okay, well, I'm not dead, so now what? And the voice said, you're not done. There's work to be done. And I was like, I don't want to do the work. I quit. I retired. Remember how I retired after 25 years of ministry? Remember that? God, remember having that conversation? I'm done. And God laughed, as like God always does when we tell him our plans, right? So I was like, so what is it? What is it? And part of why I was done with doing ministry is because so many ministries are working from an old model that no longer works, that is dying. And so our churches are falling away, and they're all about the minister. That pastoral model that it's called, or the minister-centric model. But we've begun to embrace an idea around being a mission-centric community. which says we all embrace the mission of what we're here and we develop leadership to fulfill the mission. And as that filters out, then we have this very powerful organization, whether I'm in the room or not. I have to admit, sometimes much more powerful when I'm not in the room, right? That it's not everything dependent upon me. Now, here's what I'll tell you about doing such a thing. The old model has been with us for a long time. We all grew up in churches where we went and saw your pastor, right? The new model requires a shift in thinking. Oh, again? It always comes down. A shift, another one? I got to do another one? Oh, right? So I say that. This is new information, but it creates a discontent. Have you ever noticed that when you start embracing a new way of being in the world, then your new paradigm starts having this wrestling match with your old paradigm, and you can't figure out who's going to win and who's going to survive. And because when we start into something new that is uncomfortable, it is a natural thing to withdraw back to what we know. Right? You ever got out there and like, I'm going to change my life today, and you get here and you're like, ooh, right? Ooh, maybe I'll just go back here and spit at it from here, or something, not ready to go there yet, right? So this new paradigm then is not just about a program where a bunch of people come together and have little teams or have committees, because churches are formed by committee in the old model, right? Committees. Someone once told me, a camel is a horse designed by committee. Think about it for a second, right? Not talking about committee, but talking about team. Talking about a new way of being in leadership, which part of that requires deep, authentic communication. Oh, it gets worse and worse. Because deep, authentic communication requires that you be aware of your inner voice and what is coming out of your mouth. How you're perceiving the world. What I've learned after all these years of ministry is I get to stand as a target for everyone's projection. You see in me what you see in yourself. This is true for all of us. We don't see the world the way it is. We see the world the way we are. Isn't that amazing? So I've been watching. We're moving to a new level. I'm watching it happen. It's kind of starting to seep into our, I'm hearing people go, oh, that's what that means. And now we're starting to see some of the conflict that arises around that, where people have a different point of view. Now, old model, let's all be codependent. We're in church, for heaven's sake. So when somebody's behavior is less than what you want it to be, you say, oh, bless their heart. Or in our community, well, that's just a reflection of their consciousness, because that's really so much more enlightened. Right? And so we don't do the deeper work, because that requires us to be authentic and vulnerable and all that sort of thing. But rather we just go, let's just put it away until it explodes, and that's why churches explode. Right? Anybody been in a church that has gone through some kind of explosion? Yeah. Right? It's what they do. Because the real issues aren't addressed, they're underneath the surface until they come to the surface, and now it's war. So we're learning, I got to stop doing this. I used to have a church where every time I'd raise my hand like this, I'd bring in the local jazz channel. It was pretty impressive. We're working through some demons in our sound system, so be with me, right? So it's about doing that deeper work, which means I have to look at, why did I feel what I just felt? Now, isn't it easier to say, Kelly, you made me mad, so stop it. Can I get excited? Can you agree? No, I can't do that from the pulpit, right? It's much more enlightened to say, hey, I just had a really weird reaction to that conversation. Can we talk about this? And in that is usually the gift, because what I know is the places where I am feeling rubbed are my opportunities for growth. And when I see and welcome new insight, new information, I can break out of my habitual way of thinking and move into a new way of being. And when we can go beyond that, we go to a deeper, more mature and more profound way of being in community together. This is why I'm excited about what we're doing. This is why I wanted to be a part of this community. And I see us moving forward day by day, year by year, so that we're really creating a place of deep spiritual awareness and practice and dealing with our humanness to become more enlightened beings. It's exciting to me. So Michael Singer says, come to know the one who watches the voice, and you will come to know one of the great mysteries of creation. Come to know the one, the observer, who watches the voice, and you will come to understand creation. We create from that observer point of view when we're willing to be open and receptive, vehicles and vessels for the divine to be revealed. Let's start now in prayer. And so I invite you to simply enter into this moment, to allow ourselves to remember that indeed we live, move, and have our being in the divine, that the words that we speak, the thoughts that we think are an interaction with this divine creative intelligence. So we open our heart to the presence of unconditional love. We open our minds to divine wisdom. And we simply allow ourselves to be present in the here and now. Knowing that indeed, as Jesus said, it is this power, the Father's good pleasure to give us the kingdom. So we open to the reality of love, of peace, of joy, of harmony as our reality now. We release that which no longer serves us so that we might fully inherit the kingdom afresh. How blessed we are. So as we speak this word of truth, we're simply knowing wholeness that reveals itself as health, well-being, and vitality. We're speaking the word of truth as we know that love heals all. And so we fully and freely forgive ourselves and each other, moving into a peaceful state of being, knowing divine truth. We know we are abundant beings right here and now. And so we joyously participate in divine flow. We give thanks for the many blessings in our lives, the blessings of this spiritual community, the blessings of our well-being, the blessings that are so evident every time we open our eyes and take a breath. We extend that blessing to our brothers and sisters. We're seeing a world at peace. We're knowing a planet that works for all. And we bless all priests, rabbis, ministers, teachers of all faiths, for we know there are many pathways to the divine. So we honor and celebrate them all. For all of these blessings and so many more, I'm simply giving thanks, allowing it to be so. And through the power of the living Christ, I speak this word knowing it is done. Together we say, and so it is. Amen.
if I did, it would be like this.
Isn't she wonderful? Yes. The light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us. The presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are,